Chapter 20 A Royal Discovery. "Stand back," Chris said to the Danas. "We're going to batter down that door." He and Ken made a running start and hurled themselves against it. "No use," barked a man who had not spoken before. "There are two of us here with gas masks. We'll be more than a match for you." "That's Fred's voice," whispered the Wax Queen. "He's right. We're trapped." As she spoke, the gas fumes became stronger. "There must be a way out," exclaimed Louise as she muffled her nose with a handkerchief. "The skylights," said Jean. "Here and in the studio. If only we could reach those, we might open them and get air." "They're rusted shut," said the Queen. "Then we'll have to break this one," Chris said. "It'll take two of us," remarked Ken. He looked around the room and decided to use the bed to stand on. "It's the only piece of furniture high enough to be of any use," he said. The girls helped the Wax Queen to get up and sit in a chair. Quietly, the two boys carried the bed, now closed, to the center of the room, and Ken jumped onto it. Chris climbed to his shoulders, reached up, and fumbled with the skylight. The others watched anxiously. "Hurry!" gasped Winnie Moffat, covering her face with a handkerchief. Meanwhile, Jean hurried to the Queen's studio and returned with a sculpting tool and a cloth, which she passed up to Chris. "Wait," Louise called softly. "We don't want those men to hear you break the panes. They might increase the gas. Let's cause a commotion to cover the noise." She drew Jean and the two women to the door, where they pounded and screamed to be let out, while Chris broke several panes of glass and caught the pieces in the cloth. A wave of fresh air swept into the room. "Oh," sighed the Wax Queen. "That's better." The boys leaped down quietly. "One of us should go for the police," whispered Louise. "Do you think you could climb through the skylight, Chris?" "I'll try," he said. "The officers are staked out in the attic across the street, and there's one in a house behind this one," Jean told him. Ken frowned. "Take it easy, Chris," he warned. "Those crooks might have a lookout station somewhere. If they spot you before you signal the police—" He left the sentence unfinished, but the others knew only too well what he meant. "Good luck," the Danas whispered as the boys once again climbed onto the chest. A minute later, Chris had disappeared through the broken skylight. The Wax Queen shivered. "It's getting chilly in here," she said, "and I'm worried about Osmo." The group exchanged troubled glances. What had the men done with Osmo? Could he be lying unconscious in the gas-filled shop? Louise did not want to frighten Mrs. Campbell more, but she realized that Osmo's life might depend upon how swiftly they made their escape. "I think we'd better attempt to get out ourselves," Louise said quietly, "just in case Chris has stopped." "But what can we do?" asked the Wax Queen. "Pretend to be overcome," replied Ken. "Whoever is out there may look in to check on us. Then we'll rush him." "But suppose they just go away," said Jean. "We must do something to make them look in here." Her sister agreed. "I know what. We'll pretend to be overcome, but make an odd noise." She picked up the metal sculpting tool, then hurried to the counter where the wax vats stood. One was empty. Louise signaled to Ken to carry it closer to the door. "I'll keep hitting this regularly," she whispered, "and I'll bet someone will open the door to see what's going on." "Then we'll catch him and take his mask," said Ken. "I'm pretty sure I could barrel my way through those fellas." At Louise's silent direction, the Moffat sisters withdrew to the center of the room. She, Jean, and Ken took up positions on either side of the door. Louise began a slow, insistent tapping on the metal vat. In a few minutes, someone pounded hard on the door. "Hey, what's going on in there?" called a gruff voice. No one answered, and Louise kept tapping. A few moments later, they heard the key turn in the lock. The door opened cautiously, and a man in a gas mask stepped inside. The next instant, Ken tackled him and threw the man to the floor. His head hit hard, and he lay stunned. Swiftly, Jean removed his mask and gave it to Ken, who put it on and dashed into the shop. There he came face to face with another masked man. Ken lunged and brought him down with a thud. At the same moment, the shop door burst open, and Chris entered with two plainclothes men. They marched the prisoner into the big wax room, where one of the detectives hauled the second man to his feet. The Danas had recognized him as the burly one who had followed them in the taxi and caused the near collision with the motorboat. Meanwhile, the boys had turned off the gas, which hissed from a large tank in the anteroom. One of the detectives was James Murphy. He stripped the mask from the thug Ken had tackled in the shop. "Moffat! Where's Osmo?" Jean demanded. "We locked him in the coat closet." Jean and Louise ran to the anteroom and unlocked the closet. The old man was trembling but unharmed. He had piled coats against the bottom of the door to keep out the gas fumes. As the girls escorted him to the wax room, 2 policemen arrived with a lanky man held between them. Right behind was Captain Brown. "We picked up this one sitting in a car around the corner," said the captain. "He had the motor running and a gas mask on the seat beside him." "This is the lot, then," said Detective Murphy, looking over the prisoners. "We saw 2 men get out of the car and enter the shop about half an hour ago," he told the Danas and their friends. "They were carrying 2 large cartons marked wax, so we thought nothing of it. We assumed they were helping the wax queen unpack them." "The gas tank and the masks were in those cartons," said Louise. "You might as well confess," Captain Brown said to Moffat. "Your stepdaughters are in custody and have told us all about your campaign against the wax queen and your car-winning racket. You made a pretty profit selling each of those cars after you won them, didn't you?" Moffat glared, but said nothing. Captain Brown turned to the Danas. "You were right in your theory about the Victoria bust. The girls said Moffat stole it both times. He planned to return it and exonerate his sister in exchange for the shop." The captain went on to confirm that the moving of the wax figure of Denver and the thefts of other statues were done to frighten Mrs. Campbell into selling her shop to her brother. "Where are those stolen busts?" Louise asked Moffat. Again, the man did not reply. The lanky prisoner threw a fearful glance at Moffat, but the burly accomplice spoke up. "I can tell you. They're in my apartment. I stole them and Moffat was going to sell them to a foreign wax museum." The man looked anxious. "My name is Ben Grogger. I was only Moffat's helper. Go easy on me and I'll talk." "Where's the Victoria bust?" Louise asked. But Ben Grogger insisted he did not know. He confessed that he had gone to Mrs. Carson's apartment disguised in a beard to make a wax impression of the lock. "We were going to have a duplicate key made, then use it to get in and scare you off the case." Seeing Miss Dana leave, he had taken a chance that she had a key and seized her purse. "Was it you, then, who got into the apartment house both times and knocked out the doorman?" Jean asked. "That's right. I also wrote the lipstick messages and delivered the box to the restaurant, but Moffat made the trap himself. This other fellow here, Linky, snatched the key from the Queen's refrigerator and spied on you." The tall man swallowed hard, then spoke up so indistinctly the girls could hardly understand him. "I only did what Fred told me to." "What about the diamond?" Jean asked. The accomplices looked blank, and Moffat glanced up sharply. Captain Brown said, "That surprises you, doesn't it, Moffat? You didn't know about the diamond." He explained that the man's stepdaughters had stolen it some weeks before, but had not told Moffat. "Beth Bushwick said you often pried into their business, Moffat, and even went through their purses on the sly. Last Monday, Beth had to go on an errand. Her sister was out at the time, and Beth was afraid that while both of them were gone, you would discover the diamond. So she made a hole in the black wax cat, inserted the jewel, and hid the figure in a drawer. While she was gone, Dora came home and you ordered her to go to the shop to spot the Nefertiti statue, which you intended her to spray later with sulfur dioxide. Thinking the cat would make a good excuse to go to the shop, Dora searched and found it. She deliberately chipped the figure, then took it in for repair. She neglected to mention this to Beth, who did not notice it was gone until this morning. When Beth told her sister what was in it, Dora hastened to get the cat back, and while at the shop, sprayed the statue with the chemical. Moffat's face was like a thundercloud. "Those girls have been nothing but trouble to me, always complaining that they didn't get a fair share of the car proceeds. In fact, the night of the Penfield Carnival, they tried to run away with the prize car and I had to chase them. I thought I'd managed to talk sense into them after that, but I guess I didn't. You must have had some trick which enabled your stepdaughters to choose the winning number each time, said Louise. What was it? Captain Brown spoke up. The girls told us that. There was a small staple in the winning ticket and a magnet in the ring the girl wore. When she put her hand in the barrel and swished it around, the stapled ticket clung to the ring. What I don't understand, Winnie Moffat said to her brother, is why you wanted Winnie's shop. Moffat sneered. I intended to make some real money with it. First, I'd have sold the valuable antiques. Then I'd have hired a cheap artist to make copies of all Wendy's pieces and sell them as originals. There's no telling how long I could have gone on raking with the money. What did you hope to accomplish by gassing these people? Asked Detective Murphy. Moffat looked balefully at the Danas. For one thing, revenge on the Danas. They cleared my car racket. When my spy reported they'd gone to Oak Falls, I didn't dare to go through with the drawing there. Later I got a tip that the police were on to me at Harper. I knew it was their doing. And to get even with us, you'd make everyone else suffer? Asked Louise. Moffat shrugged. With my twin sisters out of the way, I wouldn't have Winnie hounding me and I could get my hands on the shop. You have a lot to answer for, Moffat, remarked Captain Brown. I wouldn't like to be in your shoes. Please, Fred, said the Wax Queen, tell us where the Victoria bust is. Her brother smiled unpleasantly. No, I won't. You and Winnie were never fair to me, and now I'm in a lot of trouble because you put these Janas on my trail. I'm doing nothing for you. Your trouble is your own fault, Louise pointed out sternly. Fred, the Wax Queen said earnestly, the law must take its course. But I'll forgive all you've done, and even help you to get a good lawyer if you'll tell where the Victoria bust is. It is a real treasure. We must get it back unharmed. Moffat started to say no, then stopped, and a bright glint came into his hard black eyes. Sure, I'll tell you, he said smoothly and paused. He looked around at the expectant faces. Suddenly he laughed. Poor Wendy. Everybody walks all over the Wax Queen. Puzzled, the listeners waited for him to say more, but he only rocked on his heels and smirked. Come on, Captain Brown said sharply, and the police took the prisoners away. I wonder what he means, the Wax Queen said unhappily. I don't think anyone has taken advantage of me except him. Her sister sighed. You know, Fred, he was always cantankerous. He never meant to tell us where it was. Suddenly an idea came to Louise. Wait a minute, she said slowly. Maybe he did tell us. What do you mean? Ken asked as the others looked surprised. Then Jean gave a little gasp. Of course, she exclaimed. He's tricky, and it would be just like him to tell us in such a way that we wouldn't realize he had done so. You'd think it was a great joke on us. I get it, exclaimed Chris. That's a terrific idea. Everybody walks all over the Wax Queen, Louise repeated. It must mean she's below us somewhere. Is there a cellar? Yes, Mrs. Campbell said quickly. Osmo, show them. The man led the way out of the shop and opened the street door leading to the apartment. At the foot of the stairs, Osmo pulled aside a small rug, revealing a trapdoor. Ken seized the ring in it and pulled open the door. Take my pencil flashlight, said Chris, as the Dana started down a ladder into the darkness below. Before long, the thin beam caught the sparkle of a jeweled crown and swept over the pale, serious face of the Wax Victoria. A few minutes later, the girls placed the treasure carefully on the workstand in the Queen's studio, while the boys watched proudly and Winnie Moffat heaved a great sigh of relief. The Danas did too. The case was solved. But in a short time, they were to find themselves involved in another mystery, the secret of the minstrel's guitar. Mrs. Campbell drew near Victoria and gently touched the statue. She smiled with tears in her eyes. I'm so glad to see it safe. Now we can return the statue. You Danas have been so wonderful. Louise laughed and said, It's nice to have the two wax queens face to face. Jean gave the sculptress an affectionate squeeze. And I'm glad that this one's smiling now. End of chapter 20. End of The Mystery of the Wax Queen.